Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of This Is Us Season 6, Episode 15. This is the episode. Miguel, I think it's important to level with you guys right away here. It's a good thing sometimes we get screeners for these episodes in advance because I cried more after watching this episode than I think I've cried after watching any episode in I don't know, years. I had to leave the computer and go stand in the backyard for minutes after it was over.
No, this was a
Yeah.
difficult episode. I mean, there was just so much love and heartbreak, and Miguel is dead. This is what I was fearful of going into this episode. It was called Miguel. We're right at the end of the show. I'm just like, oh no. And here we are. And, it was done beautifully. But before we get too much further into all of this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We are here every single week, every Tuesday after the episode, every Thursday morning, talking about This Is Us with reviews, previews, all kinds of fun stuff here at the channel.
And if you guys do want to support us further, be sure to check out that button below the video. It is of a heart and it says thanks on it. That is the super thanks feature that YouTube has enabled. That's where you can make a financial donation to us at the channel. We greatly appreciate everyone who has decided to do that because we love doing these videos and we're so grateful that so many of you enjoy watching them.
We were really humbled to see how many people, hit that button and donated to the channel for us. And thank you so much to everyone who has so far. It really means a lot to us.
This is a beautiful, incredible episode. I think it's one of the best that this show has done. I think it's just also so difficult because it was so hard to watch, and there was just this feeling of foreboding as you go through those final episodes, and once we started to see him get older and with the cane, it's like I knew what was gonna happen, and then that shot at the start of the funeral broke me, just completely broke me.
Yeah, throughout this episode, they were really pushing that his health was deteriorating. We knew about the pressure medicine, that he had a hip replacement, that he then fell again, that, he was having pain in his left arm, and the doctor was getting really worried about his heart and a possible heart attack or stroke. And then it's then they moved to them all in black and sitting in front of that apple tree. And no, it crushed me.
Yeah.
Miguel is a character that I've said this before. Not everybody was a fan of Miguel. A lot of people out there have been not a fan of him because they felt like either he wanted Rebecca while Rebecca was with Jack. I feel that this episode shows that wasn't the case, at least for me. I got more of a sense that they didn't actually get along that well at the beginning, and that he wasn't just waiting in the wings for Rebecca that whole time, but that he really was somebody who he wanted to change who he was. We saw throughout this whole episode him really struggling with this difficult relationship with his dad, and then his dad passed away without them really working things out, and everything with Shelley, that fell apart the way that it did, where she was kind of they were fighting a lot and she was comparing him to Jack all the time, which was really weird, but that's all right. And then everything that happened with his kids, that he fell so far out of touch with them. And no matter how much he called them and was like, hey, it's me again. Hey, it's me again. Oh my goodness. That scene killed me. I was like, oh, just pick up the phone and just be like, hey, Dad.
Okay. Everything in this episode, I think, was so hard because it's a story of a guy who just couldn't fit in, no matter how hard he tried. And I think it affected us, I think, both so hard because I think, and I don't want to speak too much for you, but I just feel like we both.
No, you know me.
Yeah, it's just we both have struggled so much to fit in at various points in our lives where, I've always felt like, okay, I like some things that aren't altogether nerdy, so am I nerdy enough to be with the nerds? I'm definitely not jockey enough to be with the jocks. It's who's going to accept me for who I am or what I've done? And Miguel, like so much of the early part of this episode is like him working to better himself.
You want a better life for yourself. You want a much better life for your kids. You want your kids to do better than you, which is why it was really heartbreaking where we saw Miguel was doing so well. And he's like, hey, you know what? I'm making money now. Can I, help out? Can I do anything? And his father feeling a bit, resentful about it. Be like, hey, you come here with your car and your flashy money and whatever.
Yeah.
And Miguel being like, you brought me here for a better life. And now I'm doing exactly that.
I think it's such an impossible situation for him, and this was, I think, the first moment where like my sort of just rising sympathy just got up to this level where he thought he was doing everything he was supposed to be doing, and clearly he's got all these different influences sort of weighing on him where it's okay, be true to your roots, be true to who you are, the person who he grew up as. And I don't think Miguel ever really thought, okay, I'm not being that person. I think he always held true to who he was, but I think he also was like, I want success. I want to be this person who can get like these front row tickets to the baseball game where I can sort of be the person who's in the midst of the action. And I think his ambition, like that's a part of Miguel that they haven't pushed enough over the years, but I think it's true to a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with being so ambitious.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really liked about what they showed about Miguel in this episode was that he was always really trying to better himself, to find where he fits in. Like even when he was marrying Shelley and having kids and then the fallout of their marriage, and he's still trying and figuring it out, and his friendship with Jack, and him and Rebecca didn't get along that well at first, but they eventually figured it out too. Like it's all sort of brings him to this point where everything kind of fell off for him.
Yeah.
Whether it was his marriage, his kids, his dad, whatever, that when we get into the future where Rebecca is doing worse and worse and Miguel is like, no, I took these vows. My vows are for better or for worse. And I have made my mistakes in the past and I am not going to make them here. I love her. I am dedicated to her. Even if my hip is broken and I'm falling on the ice, I don't care. My vows are my vows till death do us part. And that's why when we had the big three there kind of being like, let us take care of you as well. Like you have done everything and you can continue to do everything, but let us help you too. We love you.
It was about time. Like we needed that moment. Like it's been so long seeing Miguel. We even saw more of it in this episode, how hard the big three were to him at times. So to get that was the payoff, I think, of everything we have needed and wanted. I think Miguel is clearly too hard on himself as well, because when he was sort of saying I've been a failure and everything, it's like you did seemingly have a really successful business for a long time, Miguel, and I know that's not everything in life, but it's something you should be proud of, and you should be proud, obviously, of your relationship with Rebecca and the fact that eventually, I know it took a while, but the big three did come to accept you and love you and care about you.
Yeah, I think that he should feel proud about the work that he put in with the big three because, we saw their relationship come together where, he finally sent out the message to her 8 years later on social media. Hey, how's it going? It was like no time had passed. Their friendship was so solid and their love for each other was so solid that it was like no time had passed. Hey, I'd like to see you. They had this beautiful moment where they're having dinner and he's like, man, leaving you on that porch, you were my home. I've never felt, so at home as I am with you kind of thing. And she gets up and goes over and just plants one on him. I was like, oh yes, this is just the way that it needed to be with them together. And Miguel does sell himself short on that. Like when finally they got caught kissing at the cabin, they were like, what's going on here? He really still put himself in the background the whole time where he was like, I will be here for you guys. I will be stable here for you guys, but I'm never going to try to replace your father. And he never did.
No. He did exactly he did exactly what he said he was going to do. And I think eventually it took time for them to realize that. And I think they started to. And I think he also started to just sort of settle in and find more of a natural place within this family. Now, I will say this. There is one beef that I have. Okay, this I will admit. This is
Oh
not
dear.
we're not this is not like a
I
big
don't have any beef with
this
this
is not a
episode.
big porterhouse slab of beef or anything.
Okay.
This is just like a tiny, tiny, tiny piece. So Miguel is on his computer, like typing away at Rebecca, and he sends her this message. Rebecca responds in like 10 seconds. What is Rebecca just living at her computer? Like, couldn't they have done something where, I don't know, she comes back after an hour? Or I don't think I've ever sent like an email to anyone that's gotten responded to that quickly.
I loved it.
Okay.
It was so cute because she's, this is the thing about it. When you're on social media and you're on it all day and you get a message and you're so excited that it's come in, like, I like that she responded right away. It told Miguel, and it told me that she was just like, oh, it's Miguel. Send. I was like, yes, yes, yes. No, I liked it so much.
I could have still done all of that. I could just like maybe give it a few minutes. Like give it okay. Maybe I'm too cynical on this. I feel like nobody is going to agree with me. But you know what?
No, I think some people will agree. The thing that I was more like, it's not a beef, but I wish that this conversation had happened somewhere else, was when the two of them were in bed together and they were like, let's talk about Jack. I was like, not the timing for it, but true to life. Sometimes timing isn't right with stuff and with conversations, and you have to have these conversations. So Miguel does bring that up while they're in bed to be like, we never talk about this, but we do need to kind of talk about Jack and where we're feeling on it, which is what I had been waiting for. This sort of like, were they going to feel guilt? Were they not going to feel guilt? Were they going to feel like it would be okay? And finally, I got some answers on that. They feel like he would be happy that two of their favorite people are together and happy. And I actually believe that.
Yeah, I believe that too. I've never really doubted what Jack would feel about this because Miguel and Rebecca didn't do anything wrong. Like the number one thing that bound them together was their love of Jack. Like she grew close to him after Jack died because, he was so close to Jack and she loved Jack and it was a common bond that they shared. And I think in that time that they were apart, like, it was clear that they had really strong feelings for each other even when Miguel left. But I think it was that time apart that really cemented to them further how much they missed each other, how much they really cared about each other, and how desperate they were to sort of have each other back in their lives, which is why I'm happy that it kind of moved a little bit quickly once, they actually saw each other again and they were finding a way to make it work, where it was like, okay, we've waited all this time already. Like, what's the point in waiting any longer than this?
Yeah, I'm glad that they had the conversation where they were just like, you know what, like we waited 8 years. It's time. My kids are all adults. Your kids are all adults. Let's just move forward with this sort of thing. And Kevin's reaction, we already knew that he had a bad reaction to this, but at the same time, he's an adult.
Yeah.
It really is kind of like, it has been 8 years. Like, it has been so many years. Everybody's moved forward in their lives that I expected him to be kind of upset, but then, when he kind of snapped at Kate, where Kate was like, well, if you guys are happy, what do you mean if they're happy? I'm like, okay, Kev, man, you gotta be like, what, like 30? Like, oof.
Yeah, he acted a lot like, a petulant child turned actor who is getting everything handed to him and has never had to really conquer any adversity. And maybe that's where he was at that point in his life, but it just was really, really selfish and unlikable. And that's why, like, from the moment that happened, we already knew, obviously, there was animosity from Kevin towards Miguel, but even more so after that, I really needed Kevin to be sort of the person to bond with Miguel the most before this episode concluded.
I also needed it to be Kevin that went to Miguel's son. Like, I expected, because this show is a full circle love moment kind of show, that we were going to have Miguel reconnected with his son before he died, sort of what he wasn't able to really have with his own dad. I knew that was coming. And I was hoping that it would be Kevin and not a Randall that went and did that, and it was. And it again sort of showed that growth of Kevin, of where he sort of started out with like, how could you, as an adult man,
Yeah.
to being like, hey, listen, like I didn't really get this chance with my dad because something, tragic happened and took him from me when I was really young. Your father's not doing that well. Do with that what you will.
I think it was a very important moment. I'm glad we got to see sort of this whole, blended family together,
Yep.
Miguel's side, the big three side, all of them, and have some sort of moments. I'm glad that we got like another sort of Thanksgiving celebration and not the one in the past where Kevin was like, I'm taking the hat. It's like,
What is with him and taking the hat? He's taking the hat off everybody else. Took it from Toby too. Toby, take off that hat.
yeah, it's like this.
Kevin.
It's amazing that this hat is still like a treasured family because this hat is associated with all this trauma at this point, and them it's like being jerks with it.
Kevin, you are a grown man.
Yeah, I'm taking this is my hat.
Take this hat.
Yeah, it was so ridiculous. But no, having like everyone there in like the I don't know if we should call this like the future or the present anymore because time is moving so fast.
Yeah, so we saw a couple things here which put some stuff to rest. So
Yeah.
Kevin is actually married to Sophie. She is there. They are both wearing their wedding rings. We also, in this sort of future, we did not see Randall's kids again. And I know that that was a big thing that people, felt pretty crappy about, that we didn't see them at the wedding. And I understand. I wanted to see them there too. But they were mentioned that they were at the wedding. But now we're at this future scene. They're not even mentioned. We saw 4 kids there. So we saw, the twins, we saw Haley, we saw Jack there. None of Randall's kids are there. I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of strange. But there's been sort of some theories going around that Sophie maybe had another kid with Kevin, which, yeah, it's possible. I mean, they are a bit older in age. People do have kids older in age. My Aunt Patty had my cousin Rachel at 48 naturally, so it happens.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's rare. So we have Sophie, who was, I think she said she was 45 at Kate's wedding. It may have been more difficult to have kids, or maybe she didn't want to. Maybe she was like, Kevin's kids are my kids. This show is beautiful for showing step-parent relationships and how important they are and how valuable they are.
I think it's nice to just have a little bit of clarity on that of, okay, this is where Kevin and Sophie are in their relationship. That's all right. I mean, when it comes to Randall's kids and like, I think there was a couple other moments like when PHILLIP was taking some kids on a hike or whatever. It's just like, they don't want to pay to have all these people on the screen at the same time. This is my cynical mind here talking, that I think it's just like they have so many characters. This episode should have probably been like an hour and a half in the first place. Like there's so much stuff I wanted to see that I think it was just like, okay, we just don't have time to put any more people on here. Maybe we don't even have enough money to put. I don't think there's anything sinister behind it at all.
No, I think it's probably money. I think time, they could have fit them in there, but I think it's just money. And I think it's also very hard to age kids at that age without like recasting them for 4 or 5 years in the future. I mean, kids grow like beanstalks right at that age, and they change very, very quickly. So they may have been a little bit worried about that, sort of showing, Tess from one age to another, Annie from one age to another. I think they could have gotten away with Deja.
Yeah, they probably could have. Do you wish that they had shown we had gotten to see Miguel and Rebecca actually get married? Like we heard a little bit of their vows, but we didn't actually see the wedding.
Yeah, I was really bummed by that. I mean, I think they did the best that they kind of could with that. I think it might have ended up, I just don't know if it would have ended up feeling really sad, because I'm feeling like from seeing the wedding pictures that maybe the kids didn't come. Maybe they just went on their own somewhere, whatever. Yeah. And it wasn't not a grand affair, but even a family affair. It's hard to know. I think they did the best that they could with that. It was nice to hear their vows. For me, I'm all about the wedding vows. Like, I know other people are like, I love weddings because I like the cake or the dancing or
Yeah.
the whatever. But like, that's the part of the wedding that really gets to me. So at least to hear those vows was something.
Yeah.
See their wedding photo was something. But yeah, I would have liked it.
We at least got to see a good, I think, legitimate, heartwarming love story of these two people who found each other in these most, extreme of circumstances where they had a lot going against them, and they found a way to make it work, and they found a way to be happy for a really, really long time. And I think that's just so it's so important, and I think it's rare in a lot of situations. And I think it's just that they had that deep love that just sort of made the end of this so hard, watching everything just deteriorate slowly over time.
I think that this episode, that particular relationship is actually going to relate to a lot more people than I think people realize. I think losing a spouse and then becoming close to either a friend or a sister or a brother and then getting into a relationship years down the road, I think it's probably more common than people think it is. And sort of, I like that they were able to use this show to kind of show that it's not, there's nothing sinister about it.
Yeah.
They weren't sneaking around. They didn't have, Miguel wasn't trying to be with her while she was with Jack. None of that was happening. And that it was something that these two people had a connection over someone that they loved. And because of that, they loved each other.
I think where I'm so curious to kind of see where they go from here is just this idea that Rebecca was so reliant on Miguel to that even when he went to get medication, like she had a really, really hard time with it. Like she is really, really dependent on him.
I'm so glad that they didn't go in the direction I was fearful of, which is that she was going to forget who Miguel was and he was going to have to be living in the guest house, or she'd wake up in the morning and be fearful of who he was beside her. I was really scared they were going to go in that direction and he was just kind of be completely like just lose everything again. I'm so glad that they didn't go in that direction. You're going to have to, you're going to kill him off and you're going to kill my heart. But like you didn't really kill my heart by doing that.
And I know just now we have to have this soul crushing experience of watching Rebecca now. Like, what do the big three do with her? What do they tell her on a day-to-day basis? It's like, it's a really hard thing. Like, my grandmother lost two spouses, but I both of her husbands ended up dying. And then, she still had her memories, but this is going to be a very, I think, very difficult upcoming episodes. I hope that there's a little bit of light in the midst of all of this, because we don't need to sob our eyes out every week.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have that many episodes left. They've broken our heart here. We've gotten through so many difficult episodes here with like the breakup of Kate and Toby, and Miguel is dead. Like, it's time to have something that's a little more uplifting before we get to the Rebecca death, please.
Yeah. Can we bring back Nikki, and Nikki can just say a couple of like borderline you shouldn't have said that out loud things that kind of like cause some family bickering? Can we bring back the Manny? I don't know. Just give us something ridiculous for a moment or two, please.
Thank you to the show for finally bringing us a Miguel episode. I really wish it had happened earlier. I understand it because they obviously decided to kill him off, why it happened now, but it was a really beautiful episode, the way it was put together. Heartbreaking, gorgeous performances. I loved everything about it. 10 out of 10.
John Huertas, you were amazing.
Oh my goodness!
He's been such a part of our lives between Castle and this. It's like,
we just love him.
I don't know what I'm gonna do if John Huertas is not on another show next year.
No, he will.
Okay,
it's put out in the universe.
John, you must get another job now,
so that we can talk about you.
I know, seriously. All right, well, of course. Hit that subscribe button, guys, so you can see more of our This Is Us coverage. We'll have a preview coming up for the next new episode. Follow us on Instagram. I'm @AndJessTV, and we will see you here next time.